Loneliness. It's something we've all felt, especially in the last few years. But we wanted to understand why. So our high school class decided to make a documentary. We spent months researching, interviewing, and asking tough questions. Because even though we're more connected digitally, a lot of us feel more alone than ever. This isn't about numbers or trends. It's about real people, our generation, and what's going on under the surface.
Why is it that in the age where we're supposedly the most connected, we're actually the loneliest? In 2023, the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released the Parting Prescription for America, a warning about an epidemic that spreads through isolation. He called loneliness one of the greatest public health challenges of our time, linking it to increased risks of anxiety, depression, heart disease, and even premature death. More than 50% of adults say that they feel lonely on a regular basis. And it's not just adults. Young people, the most connected generation in history, report some of the highest levels of social isolation. But why? When technology allows us to reach anyone in an instant, why do we feel more disconnected than ever? To understand that, we first need to define what loneliness actually is, how it affects us, how we got here, and what we can do to change it.
So you might be wondering, who are we and why should you care about our documentary? We're a group of high schoolers from Chicago who go to a small school together where we prioritize community. However, outside of our community, we often find that people are disconnected. Curious about why this is, we set out to find an answer. The documentary you're watching now is what we found. We hope to shed light on this issue and inspire change for the better. A global study spanning over 140 countries found that nearly a quarter of the world's population suffers from chronic loneliness. The consequences? Increased rates of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and even early death. For young adults, the numbers are even more alarming. 59% of people aged 18 to 24 report feeling the negative effects of loneliness on their well-being. We've all felt lonely before. Both connection and the lack of it are just natural to the human experience. The real problem isn't just that people feel lonely. It's that chronic disconnection is becoming normalized, while the effects are anything but normal. There's a reason why anxiety rates have jumped from 32% 2 years ago to 43% today, an increase of 11% in just 2 years. Depression rates have also climbed up by 9% in the past decade. But it doesn't just stop there. Cognitive decline, immune dysfunction, and even diseases like Alzheimer's have been linked to prolonged loneliness. The data paints a clear picture. As loneliness rises, so do physical and mental health crises.
It's a very interesting topic because I think loneliness is becoming more of a world health problem, especially here in the United States. My name is Minna O'Leary. I finished my psychiatry residency at Loyola University Medical Center back in 2005. So I've been practicing psychiatry since then, for a while in the Chicago area, suburbs, and now in Peoria.
I'm curious, how do you as a psychiatrist define loneliness?
Some people often confuse it with social isolation, and it's similar to social isolation. Social isolation is more the physical removal from social contacts versus loneliness. Loneliness is more of a subjective feeling or experience that's linked to poor qualities of social contacts. There is objective loneliness, and then there's the subjective. And I think when we talk about loneliness in general, we're talking about the subjective feeling, and that can vary from person to person. So that in itself makes it hard to study.
Do you think that loneliness is more common in today's society?
I think so. I do think that it is increased. I would say it's almost hovering around 50 to 60%, mainly in young people. I think young people under 30 probably are the biggest population age-wise that suffer from loneliness.
So why does loneliness have such a profound impact on our health? The answer lies deep in our biology. Dr. Stephen Cole's research at UCLA has uncovered something startling. Loneliness actually changes our gene expression, similar to being in a constant survival mode. This triggers an increase in stress hormones, like cortisol, while also ramping up inflammation, our body's natural response to injury or infection. But when inflammation becomes chronic, it leads to serious health issues, like heart disease, stroke, and even a weakened immune system, making us more vulnerable to illness. At the same time, the genes responsible for fighting off viruses and infections become less active. In other words, loneliness doesn't just make us feel bad, it makes us physically sick.
On December 12, 2019, multiple patients in Wuhan, China began experiencing symptoms of a pneumonia-like illness that was unresponsive to typical illness treatment. By January 31, 2020, schools were locked down, stores were closed, and people were forced to quarantine in their homes. Though the pandemic officially ended 2 years ago in 2023, we are still dealing with the damage that the coronavirus has caused. While we may have found solutions to cure the medical effects of the virus, social isolation and quarantine have deeply impacted how we connect with people today.
I am the Collab community manager. Collab is our co-working space here at Bellworks, and my job is taking care of the day-to-day operations of the physical space, as well as providing members with an opportunity to connect with each other and find support within the Collab community. I think people are realizing post-COVID that there were parts of office life that benefited us. Sharing space, sharing time, having shared experiences goes a long way. So maybe they didn't want the rigid commute time and start and end time to their day. But knowing people and being in relationships with people that maybe aren't your favorite, maybe aren't, top of your list of who you want to collaborate with, they do add something to your day. We have a group of people that used to work here that now comes back to co-work and collab. And so walking through the building with them here, they responded to it in such a personal way. They were reminiscing about what would happen in this hall and, remember we took, Bob's retirement picture there, or they had a credit union in the building, and they were kind of nostalgic about the credit union and the staircase because those were shared experiences. And that was a time in their life that maybe wasn't super exciting every single day, but it was personal. They were in community with people. They saw the person at the credit union. Even if they weren't super close with Bob, it was still part of their everyday life. Then to have them come back and work in this space in its new iteration was really nice. And I don't think that they would have done that if there wasn't community here. You don't feel that way about a building, you feel that way about the community.
When people talk about the COVID pandemic, one of the first things mentioned is quarantine. When it was first announced, many were ecstatic about the idea of skipping school and getting to stay home. However, the prolonged periods of social isolation that followed the quarantine mandate have been linked to negative psychological effects, both in the long and short term. One study reviewed risk factors in individuals' psychological health during quarantine. The review found that the experience of quarantine was found to be emotionally overwhelming for the individuals, revealing that anxiety, distress, and depression were the most frequently reported psychological difficulties experienced. Additionally, the social isolation imposed during quarantine is shown to have negative effects on children's overall development due to restrictions on play activities and increased screen time. The increased reliance on technology that resulted from the COVID lockdown has decreased the amount of face-to-face connections we experience.
Have you ever walked into a bowling alley and noticed that virtually nobody is ever there? Have you ever been in an arcade and realized there's almost no one around? Have you ever walked into a mall and wondered what happened to the once bustling crowds and lively shoppers? While these places might just seem like a cool spot to hang out with your friends, they actually serve a critical role in society, and they're quickly becoming history, not the future. According to Oldenburg, your first place is work or school, your second place is your home, and your third place is where you spend the most time outside of your first and second places, specifically for the purpose of socializing. A critical aspect of third places is that they allow people from all economic and social backgrounds to come together in one place to socialize. A true third place allows those who wouldn't normally cross paths to meet.
I'm the pastor of Good News in the Neighborhood in Palatine, multi-generational, multi-ethnic church, so a lot of different kinds of people. And yeah, we're just doing our best to spread the good news and make our community a better place. So I feel like one of the lessons that I personally learned during COVID, and I think a lot of people would report similarly, is there's this middle layer of relationships in your life that are really important. Those aren't your family or your closest friends, the people that you talk to every day, but there's this layer of people that you maybe know their first name, they're in your pattern of connection in your life, and they just kind of thicken up your experience of being connected. These are people that you shoot a couple of sentences back and forth about the Bears game on Monday, or people that you regularly see at the store. I have a few people that I regularly see at the coffee shop, and they just provide like a sense of connection, even though there's not like a super depth of relationship. I think that's a lot of what third places offer. I think that those do provide a sense of meaning to people, even though they're not the most in-depth relationships. And I think when we get too isolated, those are the things that we tend to lose. I think that when people have been wounded in a church community or just in a community at large, they tend to be a lot more hesitant to opt into another one. Some people's response to disappointment is, I never want to feel that way again. And unfortunately, that only makes the problem worse. I've learned the antidote to trauma is relationship. And so it's like this interesting thing that the community can be the thing that harms you, but it also is the thing that heals you. One little thing that we do here is I have this rant that I do pretty often about how I respond when people say, I really like your church. And I always say the same thing I always say, our church. That like the requirement of leadership in a community is to make it, that it isn't all a bunch of people who get together to help make my dream happen. It's we're making our dreams happen together.
According to a survey from American Life in 2019, 67% of Americans said that they have a third place. Just 2 years later, that number fell to 56%. If we understand that third places are so important, why are they slowly disappearing from our world?
I don't think people go out as much as they used to a long time ago. I think what's critical to building community is having schools, park districts, because people get together and you do things together with people you know. And when you know them already, you build a relationship with them even more when you sign up for, my girls were all in softball, and now you know everybody in town because you're on softball. You might not have known that one kid too well because they lived a little further away. So it's important you have things like that that draw people together from the town, that they can do things together.
Social media has a weird relationship with loneliness. It promises connection, but often delivers isolation. In theory, we've never been more connected. Nearly 60% of the global population uses social media, spending an average of 2 hours and 31 minutes per day scrolling, liking, and refreshing. But for a tool designed to bring people together, social media has a funny way of making people feel alone. Most interactions are surface level at best, kind of like waving at someone across a crowded room but never actually talking to them. Research shows that the more time you spend online, the more likely you are to experience FOMO, self-doubt, and the overwhelming urge to buy things you don't need because an influencer told you to. An article done by the American Psychological Association states that 60% of teens with over 4 hours of screen time said they struggle with mental health issues and intent of self-harm. Those who spend over 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression.
I feel like when I taught last year at a public high school, my students didn't know how to talk to each other because they were constantly on their phone. So their excitement for what they were watching took precedent over the relationships that they could be making. There were always kids that were lonely or hurting, but it was easier to connect with them. Now, there's so many that are lonely and hurting, but it's hard to connect with them because they don't know how to perceive human connection, really.
And let's talk about the comparison trap. According to an article done by Data Portal, people view social media as their identities. Studies show that 70% of social media users admit to comparing their own lives with what they see online. Social media is basically a highlight reel of everyone's best moments. Vacations, parties, six-pack abs, while you're sitting there with sweatpants, eating a microwave burrito, wondering where it all went wrong. The truth? Most of what you see online is edited, filtered, and carefully curated to look perfect. While social media keeps us digitally connected, it's also pulling us further away from real-world interactions. The more we rely on comment sections and DMs, the less we engage in actual conversations.
Research even suggests that excessive social media use correlates with a 30% decrease in real-life social interactions. Maybe it's time to look up, put the phone down, and, talk to a human. Scary, I know, but hey, it might just be worth a shot.
I think people underestimate how powerful a community can become because they start and grow very slowly at first, almost discouragingly slow, where I think a lot of people use, and I would say even misuse, social media is it is often considered a one-way channel. I have information and I want to get it out there to other people. And I think when social media is used well, it becomes a little bit more of a dialogue. And this is funny coming from a guy who does an email newsletter, right? Because the first thought is, well, he's sending a newsletter out to a bunch of people. I think one of the reasons why we've been successful, the curated newsletters are written as if you are having a conversation with your friends. So we try to use a very natural voice. And quite often there are lines in the newsletter that say, hey, if this interests you, or if you like this thing, hit reply. So it's inviting that back and forth. One of the things that I did in my business experience, so I worked with a company that started a nonprofit. The nonprofit is called Wreaths Across America, like a Christmas wreath. They place wreaths on the headstones of veterans at all the national, state, and veteran cemeteries across the nation, hundreds and hundreds of cemeteries, and they place thousands of wreaths as a gift of saying thank you to someone who served in the armed forces. I was working for the group that started this nonprofit when it first was just an idea. Help them start their newsletter and, writing stories and telling the stories of our veterans. At the time that I finished my work with that organization, the newsletter list was 280,000 subscribers. And the revenue had gone from pre-revenue, meaning it was just a nonprofit that didn't bring in any dollars, to when I finished, they were bringing in over $25 million a year. And during the holiday season, when this organization would get the sponsored wreaths to place, we would send, at one point we sent one email that produced over $1.5 million. And that didn't just happen. It was really the relationships that had been built over time.
At the end of the day, social media is both a bridge and a barrier. It connects, but also isolates. It all depends on how you use it.
I'm a social worker, but I have a license in counseling and a certification in social work. But I work with individuals, adults, who have been diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental illness.
And I have a license in social work. And I have a license in counseling.
If you don't have a strong sense of self or a strong identity, then you might look to social media to define who you are. And we really live in a society right now, which never used to be, that really likes to categorize things, and likes to, divide them in different groups. And not everybody fits in just one little group, And so I think sometimes just people kind of feeling like disconnected in the sense like, I don't know where I fit. But a lot of times I think it's because we've created a lot of these categories that not everybody fits into, and people feel disconnected.
Back in the day when people didn't, long time ago, when people mostly lived spread out and on farms, right? And they were not connected with people, I'm sure people were feeling lonely, but they didn't necessarily maybe define it as that because they didn't know otherwise. They didn't know that, okay, I could be connected to all these people. I could do all this. Now people know that there are all these connections and they're missing out if they're not having that. So then they're lonely. When, back in the day, people wouldn't have felt that lonely. It was just kind of normal.
Well, you think about it too. It's like they had other things that they probably just had to focus on to just survive. Right. Exactly. So you're not so self-focused, in a lot of ways that we're much more self-focused. Right. We have the freedom to be more self-focused, which is a good thing and a bad thing all at the same time.
You can't really connect with someone by just liking or commenting on their post. Put down the phone, go meet new people, be fully present in your everyday activities. Relationships aren't built in an instant. They grow over time, through shared moments, through real conversations, through showing up again and again. Set aside time to deepen your friendships. Schedule that coffee meetup. Plan that casual bowling night. Be intentional, because the more time you invest, the stronger the roots of real connection become.
So my background is kind of an interesting blend of traditional and non-traditional stuff. So I was actually a homeschooled student. So back when that was really weird and we had to always explain ourselves and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of came from this non-traditional educational background. Then I went to a traditional college, had a really great experience there and really enjoyed it. Graduated from there, went to work for them, and kind of through a strange turn of events became a very young director of admissions and really enjoyed doing that, working for the school. Then had some real questions about like broader higher education. Loved my school, but just the kind of ideas that were going on then, and also its effectiveness in preparing people for the world I thought they're going to live in. And so ultimately left that to go to work for a non-traditional kind of higher education startup, and enjoyed that. And then through, again, just a series of what I can only call miracles, we acquired that company then in 2020, and that's Unbound. And so I've been the president and CEO of Unbound since 2020. I'm part of a local congregation that I've been part of for coming on a quarter of a century now. And some of those people I knew before I was in this congregation. Now, by some measures, that's not very long, but by modern standards, that's pretty long. You know what? There are things I know about people that I've known for 20 years plus that I didn't find out until just recently. There is a deep well that keeps getting deeper the longer you are in proximity and the longer you're in community with people. And now, you talk about shared experiences. We have shared memories of people that are no longer with us. We have gone through tragedies together. We have celebrated milestones and joy together. We have been at births, and we have been at weddings, and we have been at funerals, and we have been at burials. We have served side by side. We have cried side by side. We have laughed side by side. We've eaten countless meals together. We've sat in worship together. That's a rich, incredible tapestry. And it also is a massive hedge against being lonely, right? I mean, there are people that have known me when I was in that job and people that know me in this job. So it's not my work that's my identity. They've known me when I've been an idiot and when I've been rude, and they've known me when I've been gracious and have been nice. They've known me when I've made mistakes, and they've known me when I've succeeded. And they've put up with me and loved me through all of that, right? And so when times are hard, I know that those people will surround me. And when times are hard for them, I know that I have a commitment to serve them. And so I have a purpose as well. So, in that just little incidents at a fairly small church, but with a long time, I have a place and a purpose. I have people that will help me, and I have a mission to help other people. That's not a small thing. And people talk all the time about wanting that. And that's as simple as being connected and then staying, investing. Don't underestimate the power of long-term, year-over-year compounding interest in relationships. So you think, well, it's just me and it's just my little neighborhood. Yeah, but it's not, right? It's you, and then you affect 5 people, and then it's 10, and then it's 20, and then each of those 5, 10, 20, and pretty soon you've got a movement that's spreading all over the place. And look, you're running with human nature and reality here, right? It's not like you're trying to do something unnatural. You're trying to do something that people want. They have a deep-seated, inbuilt craving and created need and desire for this. And so when you do that, you're going to find people to respond to it. And then when they figure it out, they're going to find people to respond to it. So, the good news is that, I don't think this needs, it's not that it doesn't need exposure and people talking about it in big platforms. That's fantastic. But practically what you do, you just start. And I think that the power of that is vastly underestimated. And I think that that is both exciting and honestly, it puts you on the hook, right? If you just listen to this, you've got no excuses. There's no, I'm going to wait until I get, nah. You got to start tomorrow, right? Right now, sit down. Who do you know? How can you connect better with them?
As we've seen, connection is a fundamental part of being human. Whether it's the isolation brought on by the pandemic, the quiet disappearance of third places, or the complicated role social media plays in our lives, loneliness comes in many forms. But so does connection. It can be found in a conversation, a shared space, a simple message, or a moment of presence. And although it might seem scary, the connections you'll end up making will be well worth the effort. It's not always going to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to say the wrong thing, have an awkward conversation, or slip up on your own words. But the people worth connecting with will see past those small flaws and see you for who you truly are. The challenge we face now is not just understanding loneliness, but actively choosing connection, online or offline. The more we talk about it, the more we realize that we are not alone in feeling alone. And maybe that realization in itself is the first step towards real connection.